Hello, everyone. Happy early Mother's Day, and welcome back to the Sweet Tea series. My name is Ariana Silva. Today, we have a returning guest, and we're going to talk about the mamas in Texas who are still part of the fight for school choice. We're going to see a little bit of where that's gone, as well as unpacking some of the scandals that are happening in our schools today and why parents really want to have a choice to have power over where they send their kids and where take control of their education. So Mandy Drogin, welcome back to the show.
Thank you for having me.
So the last time you were here, I think it was during session, right? If I'm not mistaken, or at least one of the specials. So I'm really interested in hearing, well, first of all, let's just do a refresher on what school choice is and where are we within this fight right now?
Sure. So school choice is the right for every single parent, regardless of their income, zip code, any other factor, to select the best education for their child. That's what we're fighting for. That, and it's part of the parent empowerment mission. So what we want to see is that every parent has transparency into their child's classroom and knows what they're being taught and why it's being taught. We want to make sure that every single child has access to a high quality education, regardless of where they are attending school. And we want to make sure that parents are respected as the ultimate decision maker and partner with the education providers. And finally, again, recognizing that choice, making sure that a parent is able to select the best education for their child.
That's awesome. And last year, you went all across Texas speaking to like how many hundreds, thousands of moms?
Anywhere between, I think 400 was probably our smallest, and we got up to 2,400 parents that were coming.
And was
it
something like 20 different cities that you were speaking in?
Yes.
Yeah, so she met moms all over the state of Texas, got to talk about this issue. And so I'm excited that we're actually going to be able to share some of the story about these moms have about their kids on our special Mother's Day episode. And another thing, if you want to say Happy Mother's Day to your mom, you should send them this video with the Happy Mother's Day message underneath it and make sure to subscribe. So let's get into some of the stuff that's happening right now. So where are we in the fight for it that you...
Sure. So the fight for the 88th legislative session came to a close in November. It was the fourth special session where we had worked together with thousands of parents across Texas, great legislators, leaders like Governor Abbott, Senator Creighton, and Chairman Buckley, all of them working together to come to a agreement, a consensus on how we can empower parents, again, with the four pillars of parent empowerment, ensuring that parents are able to make the best decisions for their children. That would have included an ESA, an education savings account, where parents who were unsatisfied with the education that they had been assigned to simply by the zip code and the street that they lived on, that they could select a different educational environment for their child. That, as well as significant historic funding for our public educators, including $4,000 pay raises. And so, unfortunately, a group of 21 Republicans decided to cross the aisle and lock arms with all of the Democrats, and they voted to remove the education savings account that would have empowered parents with education freedom, and it killed the bill. So now what we're gearing up for is to make sure that we're doing the same thing, but it's going to be even bigger and even better because more and more parents, more and more mama bears have hopped on this parent empowerment freight train, and we are barreling towards the 89th legislative session that's coming up here in January of 2025, and we are finally going to pass the nation's largest, most historic education savings account to give parents who need an option for their child the ability to put them in the best learning environment for them.
You know, it is so interesting how many parents are really looking forward to this. So, like, I have friends who, and in our age range, you know, if they're having kids, they're still, like, in their younger years, 3 years old, and they're already talking about, like, oh, I really want to send my kid to this school, so I kind of need something to be able to do that. Yeah. So the other thing, during our last episode, you were able to speak about the reasons why people who are in different communities who don't have access to the same quality of education really need this to be able to succeed. And you weren't the only mom who was saying that that their kid needed access to different education that really fit them. So Hillary Hicklin is an example of a mom who decided to step up. So who is she, and how did she get involved with it?
Sure. So it's great that this is celebrating Mother's Day. Happy Mother's Day to my mom and to all the moms out there that are part of this mission, that are fighting for our children. But Hillary Hicklin actually attended an event about almost 2 years ago called Mother's Day Out. And Mother's Day Out was put on by the entire Parent Empowerment Coalition. And it was an event to talk to moms and talk to them about what they wanted to see in their classrooms, whether it was public school or private school or homeschool or blended learning or whatever you're using to educate your child. It was to talk to them. It was to educate them. It was to teach them about their rights. It was to teach them how to advocate for their children, both at the school, but also up at the legislature, to make sure that they are able to share their concerns wherever it may be. And Mrs. Hillary Hicklin, she came to that event and she listened and learned from a lot of our great speakers. We had Senator Cruz's wife, Heidi Cruz. We had Senator Angela Paxton. We had Ellen Troxclair. We had a whole list of leaders, of mothers that were saying, here's what you can do with every different avenue. And it resonated with her. She thought, I'm here, and Hillary had been coming up to the Capitol to fight against the inappropriate and pornographic books that have made their way into our public school libraries. Really, really graphic materials. So she was really fighting and advocating for that, and quickly realized that her representative, he wasn't listening to her. It's Mr. Hugh Shine, House District 55, and she just felt like he didn't get it or wasn't listening and didn't understand why. And then once she started educating herself and continuing to get more and more involved with the parent empowerment movement, and even attending an event that the Parent Empowerment Coalition hosted that Governor Abbott spoke at and Mr. Shine participated in, and I was there, and we spoke and we educated the community there in Temple, Texas, about what does parent empowerment look like, and how can it make your community better? How can it grow your community? How can it help and serve parents, and making sure that we're answering the questions to make sure that they know this isn't a competition or a denigration of public schools. This is about recognizing that a one-size-fits-all system doesn't work. And Hillary realized that Mr. Shine was never going to get on board, that he, like many others, seemed to be beholden to the entire system that really sees our children, each of our children, as I guess a collective, as maybe a widget or a number with dollar signs following them or whatever it is, and wasn't going to support any sort of reforms, both within the public education system or providing choice for parents who are quite frustrated about what they were seeing, whether it was a low quality education or indoctrination or inappropriate materials in their classrooms. And so after educating herself and fighting the fight, Hillary said, you know what? I've had enough of this. I'm going to stand up for parents. I'm going to lock arms with the parents across House District 55, and I am going to fight. And I'm going to fight for the legislative seat. And she did. She fought and she won. She actually won in March of this year. Her community surrounded her with support and their votes. And now she is the Republican primary candidate. She is going into the election, and it's a fairly red district. So we're expected that Ms. Hicklin will win that in November, the general election, and she will come and represent all of those families, all of those parents that realize, again, whether it's choice that they need or some sort of change within the public education system, that there is a mama bear fighting for them at the Capitol.
I'm glad we're starting off with this really inspiring story of a mom saying, hey, there's something wrong. No one else is going to fix it. I guess I have to.
Right.
But I think before, the thing that makes that story really stand out is understanding how terrible some of the situations in that the other moms are in. So we're going to take a little bit of a mood turn and start talking about some of the other mom stories that you were able to share with me. So two parents went on to an episode of Sarah Gonzalez Unfiltered, that show, and they talked about what happened to their 5th grade daughter who was accused of racism for wearing blackface. And so let's talk about that story and what happened to her.
Sure. So right down the road here in Austin, in Eanes ISD, there was, it was field day. It was field day, and they break kids up to have fun and compete and have a great time. I remember field day, sack races, all the other fun things. It was awesome. I would imagine that most people remember their field days and the great memories. And so, as it's no surprise, things have gotten bigger and better, especially here in Texas. And so now you don't just show up with, a bow in your hair, a ribbon that matches your field day.
I think we did T-shirts for
well,
ours.
yeah, we had, blue T-shirts and would wear a blue ribbon. Now they go really big, and they're painting their faces and things like that. Well, this young girl in 5th grade, she was put into a team, and they all selected different colors. You had the blue team and the red team and the yellow team and the black team and the orange team and the whatever. She was on the black team. Okay, seems normal enough. I think it was a school color too, if I remember correctly.
I think it was a school color in their classroom. It was a color for their classroom pride or something like that.
So her and several of her friends decided to paint their faces black with that, with the paint that football players use to, reflect the lights that you see, that paint. And oddly enough, on that day that they showed up, and several of them had painted their faces to celebrate the black team and fight and tug of war and all that fun stuff. But there was a teacher, she actually was a substitute teacher, and she proceeded to tell them how inappropriate and racist they were, and they needed to go wash their face. And of course, these young kids thought, oh, okay. So they go in the bathroom, and they try and wash their face, and they're trying to remove this black paint that actually needs makeup remover, and I think an oil-based to remove. But so it's smearing, and they're rubbing their faces, and they're rubbing their faces raw, and they do the very best that they can, and they come out, and this teacher is still on their cases. And then in the classroom, she proceeds to make them apologize and for being racist, and they're shocked. They're embarrassed. It is a horrible experience, and this teacher goes into this whole thing about how racist this was. And these young kids they're mortified and embarrassed for each other and embarrassed among their classmates, and it's just this terrible experience. And when the parents found out, they were furious, as any parent would be when you have some kids who are in a public school with a wide range of children of all different races, and you're telling your children in front of their class, or you have a teacher telling children in front of their classmates they're racist because they were trying to participate and have fun in field day. And unfortunately, this family, they pursued, they asked for an apology from the teacher, which was refused. They asked for an apology from the school, which was refused. It became this whole thing. They spent a significant amount of money trying to get to actually the policy behind how is this acceptable and why are we doing this? And it's become a national story because it's really indicative of, unfortunately, some rogue teachers. This one happened to be a substitute teacher, but it's happening all the time where we're teaching children really counter to the values that we were raised with, which, I remember, and I talk about this a lot, I remember growing up and seeing Martin Luther King posters on the walls of my school, and his, the word bubble that's coming out is, I have a dream that one day my 4 children will live in a world where they are judged by the content of their character and not by the color of their skin. And yet, right now, far too many people involved in our education system have taken it upon themselves to drag us back to a time where all they're talking about is the color of skin. And even worse than that, they're making young kids feel awful for engaging in what was supposed to be a fun activity, and then horrifically embarrassing them in front of their peers. It was a whole year-long thing. She moved schools. I mean, it was just a big, really unnecessary thing. But bottom line is, this mama bear, again, that was fighting, just wanted her child to know, I'm going to fight with you, and I'm going to fight for you, and you didn't deserve this, and this was wrong, and you at the very least deserve an apology.
Right. And I think whenever I was reading the story from the Blaze, it seemed like it wasn't only the substitute teacher. They were sent to the office. And it
became an admin thing. The admin was backing up the substitute teacher. It became a school-wide and administrative thing where they just would not acknowledge or admit, this was a mistake. This never should have happened. We're so sorry. What can we do to help your child recognize that adults make mistakes too, and this will never happen in our classroom?
Right. And it wasn't to the parent oversight with the paint. With the paint, though, I just want to say, like, it seemed like this was an activity they were doing at school, painting their faces, and they were giving their kids black paint, and she just followed along another little boy who had blue paint or something like that.
Correct.
And
that's right.
yeah,
It was totally innocent. It was
Yes.
never. It was
And
not.
the
There was
administrator-
no intention. Again, these children. They're not even. They didn't have any concept of what blackface was or anything like that. And a rogue woke teacher took it upon herself to publicly shame, and then the school stood behind it, and they supported the teacher and the calling of the racism and all of the names. And that was really where the problem was, is why in the world would some adult at a higher level than a substitute teacher not go, whoa, this is totally inappropriate. But unfortunately, we've set up a system where they will protect what they see as their own at all costs. And we have story after story after story where children are left behind and disregarded as a casualty of a situation if we can protect the institution as a whole. And that's really what we're trying to stop, and recognize that each and every child is an individual. My children, they are mine. They are my responsibility, and I love them more than anyone, more than any bureaucrat, more than any teacher, more than anybody, any system. And it's my job to teach them the values, and it's my job to make sure that they have the character traits. And unfortunately, we're seeing a system that is not only pushing certain values into the classroom, but also really engaging in the shameful practice of shaming children if they don't follow along a specific ideology.
Right. And it, of course, like, it's very important that parents have the right to be able to send their kids to a school that supports their values. But in this case, it was just a misalignment of values and handling a situation. In other situations, it gets worse. So in Longview, there's a story, and I couldn't find a news article on this, about something that happened to a Texas teen, I believe. So what happened in Longview?
Sure. So this was a situation, I actually read the email that I received from a mother that I had talked to her as well. But essentially, her big fan of public schools. This is what I always hear. I'm public school educated. My children go to a public charter school. This is the thing, is it's oftentimes people within the public system that's also going, wait a second, we can also acknowledge there's problems and it's okay to correct this. But so she was sharing with me why she supports school choice. And it's because she starts it off with, I love our public schools. I love our local public schools. My daughter was a swim star. She went on to college, is highly successful. Her younger brother, my son, he has Asperger's. And when he was in high school, kids started bullying him really bad and telling him he was dumb, he never should have been born, he shouldn't be alive. All these things that when you're going through puberty and when your body's changing and your minds are developing and you just got all the pressures of everything that comes with being in high school and growing, and now social media and all these things, he was being bullied and nonstop. And the parents worked with the school and they came up with a plan to stop the bullying and put him in different classrooms. But the problem is that you have to walk through the hallways and you go to the bathroom eventually and all this stuff. And essentially, for an entire year, this poor boy was bullied to the point of believing what the bullies had said to him and were telling him constantly, which is that he shouldn't be alive, and because of his Asperger's, because he was different. And he tried to kill himself. He hung himself, and thankfully the father heard the noise, got to the bedroom, got the rope around his neck. And at that time, she told the story that she was actually on the way to the pharmacy to get his medication for his depression and things like that. And she gets the call from her husband. The ambulance is taking him to the hospital. She says, I blacked out. I just turned the car. I went straight to the hospital. And the next thing I remember, the next thing I remember was walking through the hospital doors and seeing him with ligature marks around his neck. And just being thankful that he was alive. And the nurses were then at some point, interviewing him and say, why did you try to do this? And he said, because my brain, there's something wrong with me. My brain is broken. And so thankfully they were able to get him. They had the resources, the financial resources to get him out of that school. But her point is we were able to do it and get him into a private Christian school around here, and it changed his life. He started to understand that he was loved and he was made that way for a reason, and that he had so many gifts to offer the world. And I'm sorry, the bullying stories always get me because there's an epidemic in our classrooms, and I hear these stories all the time, and I walk away from meeting mothers whose children are being bullied to the point that they are killing themselves. And there's a problem. And when a parent doesn't have the resources to remove their child from the environment, or a school is contributing to that, as in the case of blackface, or whatever it is devastating. And I hear these stories over and over and over again. And if you don't have the ability to strike the check to get your kid in a private school, like thankfully this family did, if you don't have the ability, if you're one of the 70,000 parents on a wait list for a charter school and you don't have the ability to get in a great alternative environment for your child, and you can't homeschool or whatever it is, you're stuck. You're stuck and you feel helpless. And these stories of these kids that either get left behind academically, but again, more in the social realm, which touches my heart so much, because there are kids that are being bullied to the point that they kill themselves. This is real. We have an epidemic within our schools. And even if they're not taking those steps, just this culture, unfortunately, that is permeating, and it happens outside of the classroom, but it all just kind of festers. Parents need to be able to, A, hold the school accountable, which we're showing that the school is protecting themselves, or B, they need to be able to get their kids in a better environment. And that's what moms all across the state are fighting for. I know my kid. I love my kid. I'm not gonna pick a different school if my kid is thriving. That's the thing. If your child is thriving in school, that's where you want to be. It's a lot easier to send your kid to the school down the street, or put them on the school bus, or let them walk, or whatever it is, than to pick an alternate choice. There is a reason, and parents en masse, millions of parents, have locked arms. They are following the leadership of the governor and so many others, and are saying, look, these are our kids. Mom and dad need to be in charge, and mama bears are leading the fight. And that's why, even after a 40-year fight, TPPF was founded to push for and advocate for and research school choice. After 40 years, finally, everyone is united and realizes, you know what? Education savings accounts provides that ability for moms who know their children and know they need a different environment. And it also provides some incentive for the schools to be a little bit more responsive to the moms and dads, because they don't want them to leave. And that's ultimately what we want to see. We want to see kids that need an exit strategy have one right now. And we want to see our public education system supported and improved so that every child gets the best education possible.
Right. And I think that really will correct who the schools answer to. Parents don't have to answer to the schools have to answer to parents.
That's right.
And actually treat their children with the respect that they deserve, and uphold their dignity.
That's right.
And so, this story already got really emotional.
Yeah.
The one that got me was whenever I was reading through the next news article in my office, I was almost just crying and trying to process through it. So sorry for continuing down
No, it's okay.
the emotion train. But this is a tragic story that happened in 2023, almost a year ago now. It was in April, or I guess just over a year ago. So there was a 6-year-old girl in Plainview ISD who was a victim of assault by one of her peers. Yes, by her peers.
3 of her peers, yeah.
So, again, a very sensitive subject. If it's, I usually am not the kind of person that will tell people trigger warning, but this one was probably a very heavy thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what happened in Plainview?
Sure. So, it made national news, but then it kind of got swept under the rug, and this was a thing. And so this also goes to something else that is a huge problem in our public schools, and that's the use of technology for almost everything. And so, in a lot of our public school systems, they have contracts with massive entities that want to sell these products, meaning iPads and, computers and whatever they are. So in Plainview, they give kindergartners iPads, number one, that's insane. That's crazy. I oftentimes have to talk about the fact that children are not just miniature versions of adults. Their brains are literally developing every single day. And there's extensive studies that show that, right, lots of screen time is not good, even if you're playing, ABC Mouse or whatever it is on it. Not a smart thing. But that's neither here nor there in this moment. So technology, kindergartners, and so the unfortunate incident that occurred is that a little girl was pulled under a table, engaged in a sexual activity with 3 little boys, and another little boy filmed it on the government-issued iPad in the classroom. It was later discovered because it was on that device. It was discovered, and so I think it was about 10 days later, the grandmother was notified, and she is I call her the mother because she's raising her granddaughter. And for a time period, for many days, even after they had the little girl in the same classroom with the boys, and there was an investigation and all these things. And basically, and you can see this when you Google it, they came out and said that this was a action of mutual consent. That's how they named it for a 6-year-old. Like 6-year-olds can't legally give consent for anything, and there was effectively nothing done. And there's law, which it's like, oh, get the boys that engaged in this, but the reality is at that age, if regardless of who, all of those children engaged in activity that they learned somewhere else. There is abuse going on. There are things going on. But really the whole thing that I say about this mother, she has fought and done everything she can to try and get information from the school system, to do public information requests, but she can't get any information there. She's never seen the video. They won't let her. She's done, and basically everything effectively was handled by the school district police department. If people don't realize, there's ISD police departments, and that's who handle it, and that's who came out and wrote the report and said it was mutual consent, and there's nothing we can do about any of this. And this mother, meanwhile, thankfully the little girl was able to get in a charter school that was near, and she is thriving, but she had to pay for extensive therapy. Again, she's literally, to this day, I actually spoke to her last month because I try and keep up with her and try and see, are you getting anywhere? Where are you? And there's just, the system has set up to effectively protect itself, even with public information requests on trying to figure out, was this child who the little girl said was the perpetrator? Apparently there was, according to the mother and the child and others in the community, that there was a history of inappropriate behavior, of exposing himself, of bringing up a parent's phone and showing inappropriate explicit materials in the classroom. And these are kindergartners. And so it's devastating. And this is a mother who still, it's been a year, and thankfully her child or her grandchild she says is doing well, but it's been a devastating thing, and it's had lingering effects on everyone, and they still cannot get answers from the system.
I just couldn't wrap my mind around this idea that there was a little girl who was 6 years old who was forced to perform a sexual act on one of her peers, and she had to go home that day, and the parents were not notified that anything had happened to her.
They left him in the classroom for several days until it wasn't
and the
until
parents
the grandmother
weren't
was
notified.
when
she had to ask her what happened.
What happened when they told her, and she came up and she asked to see the video. She wanted to know what was going on, and they said they couldn't show her because it was child pornography. And they were like, we can't show you this. And so all of this stuff, and then she was like, well, where is she now? And they said she's in the class. She's in the classroom, and the grandma was with the boys, and they were like, yes. And it was like, what?
I just don't know how
crazy.
And again, the biggest thing that I left that with was, if I was a parent and I wasn't told that something happened to my child, and I was left having this emotionally wounded daughter in constant threat of being assaulted again, I don't know how I would.
Yeah, no, I mean,
handle that.
That's exactly correct. And this is a family without a lot of financial means, and they're not. She said, I don't have money. She's straight up told me this. I'm poor. I'm not even looking for, much like the mother in Eanes ISD, she wasn't looking for money. She wasn't looking to sue the school district. Never once in any of my communications as she said she wants answers. She wants to understand. She wants to help her child heal. She wants to make sure that things like this doesn't happen again. She wants to make sure if there is a child that has a history of inappropriate sexual behaviors, are we tracking this? Are we ensuring that we're putting
Is
extra
that
eyes?
child
Are we
being
getting
treated?
right?
Yeah, what's happening to that child at home?
Is he being sexually? I mean, it's a whole thing. It's just nothing. And they'll say, we can't divulge this information. We can't give you this. We can't give you that. It's a very frustrating situation, and she's still looking for answers to this day. But I hope that she gets them, and I just continue to pray for the little girl, as I'm sure that this will be an experience that she will have to learn to deal with for the rest of her life.
Yeah. So, I guess moving into like kind of the technology aspect of it, you mentioned that the kids in this class had iPads and they were government issued. How is it for you, like raising kids now who are raising younger kids now, where I'm sure a lot of moms around you will just lean back on iPads and stuff, but how is it for you as a parent if that's not the way that you want to raise your children?
Well, I'm incredibly blessed in that my children, my daughter, who's the rest are not in school yet, they're in preschool, but my daughter who's in first grade, she goes to an incredible public charter school. And it is a classical school, which means they teach the classics, and it's not, it's Winnie the Pooh and the Velveteen Rabbit and things like that, and focus on the foundation of education, phonics-based learning, Singapore math, like these things that are really important. But what's most important to me is the culture in the environment that she's in, which is there is no technology. There's no technology in the classroom. There's no technology, when she comes home. If you choose to use an app for their phonics-based learning stuff, you can do that so that they can repeat and learn the phonics. But other than that, there's literally never any mention of technology. And they don't have phones on the campus. There's none of that. And I think that this goes back to kind of my point about little brains and development. Look, you have these titans of technology, Zuckerberg and Steve Jobs, I remember said stuff, and all these people who are like, my kids don't have any of the stuff that I'm selling over here to your school districts. I don't allow that. And it's because their brains are developing, and the last thing they need is to have these neurons firing off and rewiring the way that their brains work so they don't have an attention span or they don't comprehend or whatever it is. So yes, I am adamantly opposed to the significant expansion of technology being used in the classrooms. Now, that's not to say that there's not an age-appropriate time to introduce children to technology and to allow them to utilize it. But I had a meeting. My favorite part of my job is say it's my favorite. My favorite part and the worst part of my job is meeting with moms. And I literally just had an hour-long meeting with a mother who was explaining to me that her son, this woman is incredible. She adopted her 3 children. They were a sibling set. It was foster care. So it showed there was a 3-year-old, a 2-year-old, and an 8-week-old when they adopted. All of them had been born addicted to methamphetamines. And so there's a whole host of things, obviously, that come with that. And she was sharing this with me. And so her son, right now, he's 15 years old. And she was telling me that he has every single thing, and her daughter, that everything is on a laptop from their school. And that she said one of the issues with all of them have learning disabilities, likely stemming from in utero. But she said, can you imagine a 15-year-old boy who has ADD? And she listed off a couple of other things and said, there is no textbooks, and everything that he is expected to do is on a laptop. It's a nightmare. I know what he's doing. I walk in there and he's just on Zooming with his girlfriend. There's no homework being done. There's no this. It's incredibly frustrating. And so she's very frustrated about the situation. And I hear this all the time in the grade school levels. Why are my kids being handed this technology? And parents are very frustrated by it. And again, there is an appropriate time to introduce stuff. And I understand that there's a lot of great learning that can take place. But it is very frustrating to see where our system has shifted to. And quite frankly, it's not just the physical technology, but it's this online curriculum and messaging and things like that. Look, we're looking through the PEMS data, which tells us how people are spending money. And we can see that some of these districts are spending more money on technological education, so programming that goes onto the technology, than we are teachers. And look, this is a huge problem. Teachers engaging with students, that's what teachers want to be doing. Teachers go into teaching, the majority of them, to help educate our young people, to prepare them for the next generation. And unfortunately, there is just so many people that are not that are more concerned about how they can direct dollars and how they can make things easier, or whatever it may be, whatever their reason may be. And they're cramming all this technology into our little people's educational setting. And yes, I have a huge problem with it. And I'm so grateful that I was blessed enough to get into the charter school. You do a lottery system. And we literally, I remember when she got in kindergarten, I said, we won the lottery, because I just could not imagine being forced to send my child to a school where, whether it's kindergarten, first grade, or up, where they just hand her an iPad or a laptop and say, here's how you're going to learn.
Right. And it really does, for you, having this charter school as an option does give you that choice then to be able to have your child exposed to technology when you choose you choose it. And that can be for you. And for another parent, if let's say they're like, oh, actually, I want my middle schoolers to go to a school where that does engage a little bit more with that, parents would then have that option available to them. So it's not taking it away. It's saying, hey, you actually have the choice now to know, your kid best. Mm-hmm. You know when you want them to be learning and engaging with these different kinds of things.
Exactly. That's exactly
what it is. And so for me, my dad, he was doing IT management whenever I was growing up. And so for him, it was really important that I knew how to type well. So I remember there were, back then, it was always on a CD that you'd put into the computer and doing different typing things. Yeah. And it's definitely not the same as iPads now that you have a child scrolling on, playing games on. It was 30 minutes at a time. I'd play a few times a week.
I remember the touch it was touch typing class. I remember that. I think we did it in middle school, maybe 6th through 8th or something like that. And you had sheets that were covered.
There was a little cardboard thing that we had for us.
Okay, we had
and
a
it was
laminated
over
sheet,
hands.
and you put it so that you couldn't lick your hands. That's exactly right.
Right.
Yes, totally normal and age appropriate, not a big deal. But no,
right.
I don't.
And if you want a school that would engage with that, I think it just is amazing how much school choice would allow for that expansion of being able to have that kind of material.
Absolutely.
And at the ages that the parents would choose to have it.
Correct.
So another thing that's weird with the technology stuff is just seeing girls online and on social media at younger ages and producing content, becoming Instagram, whatever, TikTok famous as teenagers, which I remember I got Instagram way too young. I think I was 12 or 13, but it wasn't the same thing as these children who are famously creating content with millions of views. So this was a trend last year, and I've seen a few of them this year, where there were girls who were trying to break their school's dress code. And it was a TikTok trend. I sent Mandy one of the videos from it earlier today. And I don't really want us to show it because it makes me feel weird if we're showing the body of a teenager.
Right. We can talk about it.
Yeah.
Yes.
So what was your reaction to it? Because you didn't hear about it before I showed it to you, right?
I didn't. And so this came about, I feel like we should share. This came about because I was sharing a story about a mom that I know, and she had, I think he's 16 now, but last year when he was 15, she went and picked him up from school and or dropped him off at school. That's what she was doing. She was taking him to school. It was, I think, the first day of school, and she came, and I could see her posting online and she was shocked and infuriated about what the young girls were wearing. She's like, I've got this 15-year-old boy. His hormones are raging right now. And these young, beautiful girls are wearing biker shorts and tank top or tube tops and sports bras into this high school that's here. And she was like, what's going on? How is this kid going to sit there and learn? And then it just became this just more and more infuriating that she would talk about all the time, was just, what are we doing? Where's the dress codes? I understand girls wanting to test the limits, and my son loves it. He thinks it's the greatest thing ever, but I'm fully aware what's going on. And so the reality is that, look, that is not a time for kids to be for young ladies that particularly their bodies are developing at a different stage. I mean, it's bad enough what they see all the time on social media with filters and famous people and extensive plastic surgery and things for these young girls. No wonder we have a mental health crisis, right? Is you look at these movie stars and that are filtered or that are doing all this stuff, and they think that is what beauty is. That's what they're being told, whether it's in their social media or surrounding them. And then when you've got the girls that are more developed and they're showing you what they got in a school setting, it's completely inappropriate. And I'm not like, whatever you want to do in your own time and at the pool or whatever. But, and that was kind of this mom's position of, she was very, very, very angry. And, it's something that I told you about, and then you were like, have you seen this TikTok? I am not on TikTok. I am not on Instagram. I am not a social media person. But I know that this stuff exists. So when you showed this challenge or whatever, where this young girl was essentially saying, what can I get away with? And that's a very normal developmental thing for children at any stage. What can I get away with? How can I push the boundaries? And at what part does mom or dad or the school reel me back in? And what we're seeing time and time and time again is there's this, I remember when it was the fingertip rule, right? You had to put your arms
ours was
down.
more strict than that.
Okay. Ours was fingertip, and us girls sometimes, because this was normal. It was
You'd pull your
you try and lift your shoulders up a little bit, like no, yes, you'd push them down. That's what it was. I guess that's what it was. You would push them down so that your arms.
Either way, it was to try to make your skirt look like it was longer.
Right.
For us, it was like it had to be a credit card length. So
that's
administrators would pull one up if they needed to.
That's smart.
I was so jealous of the shorter girls because I'm like, I'm wearing the same skirt.
Right. Right. Oh, and I remember the boy. Here's the thing. I remember Mr. Huell's camp. I don't know if this gentleman is still alive. Oh, he was just a great teacher and just a manly man. It was like he was a 7th grade teacher, but in middle school. And for boys, the style, I don't know what the style is now for the boys, but it was to wear your pants sagging is what it was called, right?
Thank God I was after that trend.
Okay.
I cannot with that.
Okay, so that was the thing. And Mr. Huell's camp could not stand it, and understandably so. And so he kept his Kroger plastic grocery bags in a drawer in his desk. And if he saw any kid, not in his class, any boys that were wearing their pants too low and didn't have a belt to pull it up, he made you, he would rip the bags and he would make a belt out of the plastic bags. It was hysterical.
That's the best teacher response I've ever heard to that.
It was, it stuck with me.
But it is crazy seeing teachers hold, and administrators, even whenever I was in high school, hold you to that high standard.
That's right. And that's part of it is we're teaching children. We're teaching them how to present themselves. We're teaching so many things. So yes, there has been a shift away from having some sort of appropriate modesty going on. And again, I fully understand allowing children to embrace. I'm actually really glad that my child goes to a school that they require uniforms, because I get it. I understand wanting to push those boundaries. But part of helping guide young minds as they're developing is teaching them self-respect for themselves, teaching the importance of presentation of themselves and their work and things like that. And I think that there has been this shift, and this goes to a whole lot of other dynamics that are in our classrooms right now, which is kind of a free reign. You can wear what you want, you can do what you want, you can say what you want, you can use whatever language you want, you can behave how you want. And then we turn around and go, right now, right up the street at UT Austin, I remind you, those kids were in our public schools last year and the year before and the year before.
And just to give what you're referencing, this episode's airing Mother's Day. For us, just yesterday, there were protests at UT.
Yes.
There were pro-Hamas.
Supporting Hamas.
I went to UT. I've never seen a protest like that. With that, I would have been... Oh my goodness!
It's mortifying.
It wasn't like that.
It is. It's totally mortifying, and
like the whole South Quad was just full of protesters.
And the reality is, it's across Texas, it's across the country. There is this groupthink that's going on, that there is no right and wrong, or there is no good and it's bananas. And I think that they didn't just get that way. This has been an entire generation of young people that have had a lot of absence of course correcting when necessary, of discipline when necessary, of tough love and or soft love when necessary, whatever it is. And now they literally do not know how to behave in a civilized society. And yes, so that's what we're seeing. And who knows what will have happened by that point. But you've got radicals that have this mentality that none of the aspects that have made America the greatest, most benevolent, most wonderful country, the most generous country that's ever existed on the face of the earth, that has made us great, which is hard work, personal responsibility, having high standards and high expectations of oneself, and just proclaiming and behaving as if none of this matters. So to your point on the dress code, I don't know, maybe it's the broken windows theory that became very prevalent under when Rudy Giuliani was the mayor of New York, which the idea was from a sociologist that said disordered surroundings create disorder. And so basically, the idea in New York and in a lot of places that adopted this mentality was if there's a broken window, you fix it. If there's graffiti, you cover it. If there's a problem, you fix it, because order and structure and a positive, happy environment creates a more positive, happy experience and the desire to have pro-social, positive behavior, being a decent human being, working for yourself and doing what's best for yourself and for your family. So I think we've kind of gone off the tracks. But my point being is that moms want that. Moms want that. We all want that. We remember being young girls and wanting to press those limits and wear the short skirts. And I get it. But there's a time when moms and the schools, because there's this pushback of parents need the schools that they're sending their children to be structured and be firm on their rules so that they can say you're not doing this, and the school's backing them up. And conversely, the schools are constantly saying, well, we need the parents to back us up on this or to do this. And there's a breakdown of trust. There's a breakdown of the relationship between far too many of our school systems and with parents. And I think that you can see that in a lot of different aspects of life, and the dress code is one of them.
Right. So now you're at this point in your life where you have your kids that you've done a great job with making sure that they have the opportunities that you want them to have at a school that can enforce their values. And I just find it awesome how much you prioritize making sure that you have a flexible schedule to spend time with them, as well as on top of that, still being able to start trying to influence change, whether it be policy or I'm sure even before school choice, it was, I think you were doing stuff with poverty work, if I'm not mistaken. But I think that's so inspiring that you're able to do that. Did your mom have any role to play with you becoming, or like having those values and wanting to instill those for your kids?
Absolutely. So it's funny you say that. It's actually interesting being right-leaning or on the conservative side of things. I have found through my career that once I started having children, my employers have always been more than willing and understanding and accommodating of, I will work hard. I will work at night and in the morning, and I will be here and I will do everything. But when I need to do something for my children, when I need to be there, when whatever, I'm going to be there and I'm going to do that. And there's always been an understanding, a love of family and a respect for women, and that we can, whatever our roles are, whether you're in the home, working in the home, or outside of the home and balancing all of it, that it's also vital to be able to be there for the family and for the children. So I'm incredibly grateful both to the Texas Public Policy Foundation that has always been so generous. I mean, I can remember even before I worked here, but was partnering and doing work with TPPF, bringing my newborn son. He was, I think, about 4, maybe 6 weeks old, and there was a big event taking place here that I needed to participate in, or I wanted to participate in, and I just brought him, and I was breastfeeding, and I covered him up, and I was sitting there with like all the bosses and all the people, and I was like, I got a baby, but I'm here, and there was, it didn't seem to faze anybody, but absolutely. So a little bit about my background. I am half the woman that my mother is. She taught me to fight. It was something that, I've talked about this before. I was a special needs student. I actually, my left eye, still to this day, it doesn't track. It does, meaning like when I'm reading, my left eye does not follow the words. I read basically in the right eye. But basically, when I was little, and in elementary school, I wasn't reading. There was the Bluebirds and the Redbirds group. The Redbirds were the really smart kids that could read and could do all the things. I was in the Bluebird group, and I just got really good at memorizing, whatever book we were reading at that time and I couldn't. And she realized, and at that point, she had to fight in the system, and she had to fight to figure out, what's wrong with my child. They didn't know at that point. It took a lot of her work within the school system and going and seeking outside help to figure out, okay, here's what the problem is and here's how we can correct it. But that was in early elementary years. But then my mom was room mom all the time and all these things. And she taught me how to build a community. So always involved in women's club and junior league and all this in our community. But when we got into middle school and high school, my mom was kind of the ringleader of fundraising for all the things in our school. And when I say that, an incredible story about her was, when you're fundraising for your school, she was constantly, obviously, asking for donations and things like that for silent auctions or whatever it is. But she had a relationship with someone at Papa John's Pizza. And because she headed up fundraising for the middle school and high schools and all this, my mom struck a deal that was they would charge $5 for any pizza that was ordered for any of the school's stuff in Sumner County. And so they said that, and then you sell them for $1 or whatever a piece at the concession stands or at the dance or at the football games or whatever it is. And so one year my mom ordered so many pizzas. She ordered literally the most pizzas in the entire country. And Papa John's gave her this big award and I remember it was this satin sports football kind of jacket, but it said Papa John's Pizza and all of that. But she just really, really inspired me because it wasn't just her, right? She's just there working and she had a little house cleaning business on the side. So she figured out a way to have a flexible work schedule so she could be there for her kids. And that's what I learned from her. You can be the most loving and wonderful and giving mother, and you can fight for your kids and you can fight for your community. And when you build a community of other mothers, because of course there were, she has to have other mothers that are working the concession stands and doing all the things. And she figured it out. And I think that that's what I learned from her, how to mother my own children and how to fight for my community. And my community is Texas and the next generation.
That's amazing. Thank you so much
for an emotional one.
Well, thank you so much for being willing to share with me, Mandy.
Yeah, of course.
If people are inspired by your work that you're doing and want to help out some of these other moms in the fight for liberty, well, moms and dads and children across Texas, what is a way that they can get involved?
Call me, text me, come see me, be the mom like that one today. Or I give my phone number out to any mother. I want to hear your stories. I want to share your fight. So you can also go to txparentsmatter.com. That's txparentsmatter.com. You can learn all about what's going on in our school system, how you can fight back, how education savings accounts can be incredibly helpful if you need an exit strategy, why you should fight alongside the parent empowerment mission, why you should join behind leaders like Governor Abbott, Chairman Buckley, Senator Chairman Creighton, Lieutenant Governor Patrick, all of these leaders that are here and they're in these positions and they need moms. I can't tell you how many times that we know that hearings are coming up or events are coming up and they're saying, I want to meet the moms. And it's true. Moms, we change the world. So go to txparentsmatter.com or go find me on texaspolicy.com and get involved, join the fight, and keep fighting for your babies so that we can change the next generation of Texas and make sure that we remain the most prosperous, the freest, and soon to be the most educated state in the union.
That's amazing. Thank you so much, Mandy. Happy Mother's Day to you.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
And happy Mother's Day to all the mamas out there. We will see you next Friday.